Okay, hello everybody. Hi. Today is another edition of Ubitalk. So I'm really excited to have Danielle and Mike. Okay, Dani and Mike with us, and really good people know their stuff, and they're gonna be sharing some tips on how you know talent from South America, so engineer, product specialist, design specialist, can land a job on either an American or Canadian company. Just to make sure that you guys know where I'm coming from. Here at Ubiminds, we are kind of a matchmaker for people from these areas and companies that are going to provide them very meaningful jobs. So it's not just about, filling a position, but actually finding something that's going to make sense for your career and your life goals. So if you guys can always follow us every week, either on social media, YouTube channel, wherever. We're always sharing these things for anyone that wants to learn about more about techs and career markets in terms of software development, both in Latin America and also North America. So too much from my side. Mike, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well out there. So I'm Mike Stern. I'm a licensed psychologist by training here in the U.S., based out in New York. My primary job is I work for the largest integrated healthcare system in the U.S., the federal system. And then I also sort of do a good bit of organizational development consulting externally with various Fortune 500 companies, some smaller mid-range companies, kind of whether it's sort of coming in and helping assess their current status, or they have an identified problem and they want some outside perspective on how to tackle it. That's kind of where my bellywick sort of lies, and had a lot of success working with these companies, kind of collaborating to help them sort of see fresh perspectives and fresh ideas. And I've been working with Ubiminds as a partner now for I guess a little over a year now. When I came across, we saw kind of a real alignment in how they approach their operations, and I love working with them. So yeah, I'm happy to be here and share any wisdom that I might have.
I appreciate it. I mean, we always try to, align ourselves to people who know their stuff and that can provide value to, again, the community. We do a lot of like cross-referencing, a lot of interdisciplinary work, bringing from psychology to software development and making sure that everybody is able to thrive and grow. Dani, can you introduce yourself a little bit, talk a little bit about what you do at Ubiminds as well?
Sure thing. So, hi guys, I'm Dani. It's nice to be here today. I am a tech acquisition lead here at Ubiminds. So that means that I'm constantly and daily talking to candidates, both, during the interview process and also to prep them to move forward to meeting with our clients. So it's really important to, share some tips, how people can better prepare and make sure that they're landing that job they're looking for in an international environment. So yeah.
Yay. So yes, that's definitely it. We have, really good people, and we have to make sure that they get really far in life. They're getting, their work recognized and also being challenged and finding things that are, fun to work with. So before we start, I think the first step, if you're, an engineer in Brazil or Argentina or wherever, and you're looking to work for an American company, for example, is to know that you have to check if it's really feasible. And what I mean is, sometimes it's not just up to your skill set. Sometimes, depending on the industry these companies are working with, they have restrictions. So I'm talking to them every day and I'm seeing things like sometimes they can't send data abroad, right? There's some restrictions depending on the industry they're working with. Or maybe, let's say if it's like a government-based company that they're supporting them, they can't have non-US nationals. So it doesn't matter how awesome you are as an engineer, there's no point in you trying to apply directly to these companies, that some of them just simply aren't allowed, like they have legal requirements that restrict them. So be aware and be mindful and check that in, just because you avoid a lot of frustration that way. So that's one of the things to have in mind. But other than that, let's say that, okay, you've gone on a job site or found a company like ours that provides this kind of consultancy and is able to do this match with companies, if like you found a legit position, right? So, how do you know whether this role that you found, like it's actually going to lead to this meaningful career, if it's something that's going to be fulfilling for you, right? Mike, you probably can bring a lot of this in, like how can a candidate go? It's like, it's not just about the money, right? It's about finding something that they're going to be fulfilled and happy and excited about. So how can a candidate know if it's a good match?
So I think kind of the best way to approach this whole process, I almost look at this as kind of a first date, the interview process where you're getting to know each other. So, the traditional sort of interview model is you're kind of thinking about how do I sell myself the best and get this employer to sort of select me. But I actually like to kind of reframe the whole process and look at it as kind of this get to know you session between sort of the both the employee and the employer, and that's really going beyond sort of knowing just kind of the basics of this company. I think that the key really here is to understand from the company side, and having been through a tremendous amount of interviews, both as kind of the hiring official or as a consultant role. We look for a cultural fit, right? Are you connected to our mission? So, as an example, I worked in the federal system working with veterans, the individuals who served kind of our military in the U.S. And so if we go through a whole interview process and nobody mentions the importance of sort of veterans to them, we really start to question their connection to the mission, right? Are they here just for the paycheck, like Sheila referenced earlier, just for the job? And when we want really people to feel that strong, that kind of heart connection to what they're doing. So understanding the company's mission is really key. Getting down to sort of, doing the homework and understanding what the company's culture is. Do you there's lots of Reddit sub-channels or career page or Glassdoor to kind of get a flavor of what that company's culture is like, and that will help you kind of gear or prepare some of your responses, because we want to know as an employer that you match our culture. More simply put, can you play nice in the sandbox? Do you operate sort of similarly to how we do? And that's our key points here.
And I'm guessing that makes a lot of sense because, after your bills are paid, right, what's going to make you stick around is because you're going to believe in that service you're providing or the product, or you really know the impact you're having on your end user, right? So that's what keeps you moving and makes sure that you do like something really well done. So yeah, definitely you should do the due diligence on the company, on the position. I personally sometimes like to have, and this is probably a sales background, like do the due diligence on the people you're going to talk with, right? So if you already know the name of the person that's going to be interviewing you, look them up on LinkedIn, look at what you have in common interests, what experiences they had before. And that way is a nice way for you to connect, right? In terms of generating a rapport, but also where the person's coming from, what kind of profile they have, so you can talk on the same language, so to speak. Dani, I think that you guys do a lot of this work when it comes to prepping a candidate, right? As well, to make sure that they make best use of their time.
For sure. So that's a very important point. I mean, and one thing to compliment on that, and I'll sure mention this again, but it's also prepare your questions, right? Because you do the research, you Google them, you see a lot of different things about the company, but there are some things that are not in the job description, that are not on Google. You need to know from the person that you're going to be talking to. So I would say for sure, get your questions ready as well. But even before that, let's talk about, preparing yourself for the interview. So we talked about doing the research, understanding the culture, the interviewer, but also organize, prepare mentally. So especially for candidates that are not, that are from Brazil and are interviewing for an international company, what's the language that's going to be spoken? It's English. That's not our first language. So, there's the brain fart. So if you want to avoid the brain fart, if you want to avoid, having that awkward gap, not knowing what to say, make sure that you're preparing your little, your script. You have some bullet points. You're thinking through your experience. Hey, this is what I did. So this is the company that I worked for. This was the challenge. This was what I delivered. These are the technologies that I used for that. This is how I interacted with the team, and always fitting that in with the job description as well. So this goes back into doing research, right?
And
So you bring the storytelling.
And just that's something really nice, a good tip, because the truth is about half of the interview process is predictable, right? You know that they're going to
Yeah.
ask based on the job description about relevant experiences and so on. So you can already prepare in advance. And then
Yeah.
if you do get nervous and if you do forget something, like, I don't know, sometimes you forget the word in the foreign language and that makes you nervous. At least you've got covered your bases, right? So that's
Yeah.
a really
Yeah.
good way.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
usually say that this is the part of the interview that you just know it's going to happen. You know, you will have to talk about your experience, about, technologies, where you worked, when you worked. So be ready to talk about that. You don't have to think about it that much. And then if you have that all practice, you have that written down, you have a little cheat sheet, then when you get to the interview, you only have to really think about and prepare and just wing it, whatever is asked of you as an extra. So if you're taking care of that, you have more room to think about the unpredictable.
Makes total sense. I think something else that candidates can remember is, though this might be like your first foreign interview or something like that, these teams that are welcoming, if they're interviewing you, chances are they are very big in diversity. They already have hired people from other countries before, so they will be willing to accept an accent, for example. They understand that it's not your second language, and they might even admire that because, you're already one step ahead just for effort in that sense.
Yeah.
So, if you're nervous because it's not your first language, of course you have to practice, but be aware that the person that's on the other side, they're your ally in that sense, and they're already
Yeah.
expecting this. So you don't have to
Yeah.
have like this native level in that sense.
And I think
Right.
just to kind of elaborate, I think that's the really sort of the key there to sort of presume, the presumption that this is kind of an adversarial type of back and forth is an outdated way to look at this stuff. So they really are looking for good candidates. The ball sort of in your court as the employee with lots of options for employment. So they're really looking to kind of to see the real you, and I think that's really kind of an important element. So I sort of add to the idea of self-awareness. Know what you're good at and know what you're not good at, and highlight those strengths every opportunity that you get. So, how do you get to know yourself? Ask for feedback. Go to trusted friends and family members. Practice, rehearse, record yourself. Send it to somebody that you trust. Ask them for their brutal honesty, knowing that it's coming from sort of a good place. So a lot of this is getting to know yourself. There's online tools. If you've heard of the DISC assessment, there's a lot of these tools that the companies use that are for free. So you can go online and kind of fill out and you get a nice profile of your interpersonal strengths and your communication style. And once you kind of have that awareness, you get to highlight those strengths in your interviewer so that the employer knows what he's getting when you show up that first day after your successful interview.
Yeah. And to complement on that, I think that during the interview, you can also show your vulnerability, right? You can say, hey, I'll be honest with you, English is my second language, so bear with me. And you can use some kind of sentences, some words that will connect. Hey, this makes sense. Was that clear? Would you like me to further elaborate on that? So you can share, prepare, rehearse, get feedback, get better, but then also during the interview, be open to hear, I'm not clear about that. Can you rephrase it? Can you explain more to me? So you're open and you're asking those questions. That helps a lot to know if they're connecting with you, if you're being clear, if there's, if you need to maybe, change the way that you're communicating. So you can kind of feel that during the interview as well.
And this is something really good, right? If you're being honest and you're not overselling in that sense, of course, you're highlighting your strengths, but you're not lying, for example. Interviewers catch on to that and they want to bring in someone to the team that's going to be an ally, someone that they can trust. So if you're already building that trust and kind of humanizing yourself and showing like that you're aware of what you have developed. That's the first step for them to know that, okay, then you just need this slight training or this backup, and you'll be already being aware of that. That's already a step in the right direction. Mike, let me ask you something. Just making use of you being, an American and talking about these companies, like, what are these interviewers looking for? Is it just the technical know-how? With a collaboration? What kind of profiles like stand out for them?
Yeah, I'd almost make the case that at this point, if you're getting an interview, we presume you have a technical expertise. That's not really what the focus of the interview is. So, I think a lot of folks kind of get stuck and tripped up on preparing, technical type of answers and those sort of I got you questions. What the interview is about is getting to know you as the individual. And simply put, so, there's a lot of technical expertise in our Latin American talent. But, finding that nice balance of technical expertise and English proficiency, and then someone that will fit nicely in the American sort of company's culture, that sort of takes a broader candidate that is more well-rounded. So, as I'd say, almost in the past, your technical skills could sort of mitigate some of your soft skill weaknesses. I think the balance has flipped where, these soft skills and collaboration and communication are more valued oftentimes than that technical expertise, because oftentimes we believe we can teach some of that technical expertise, whereas the soft skills are harder to learn.
Okay, and that actually matches something that I hear from a lot of companies, especially when they're working with distributed teams and people are, geographically dispersed, like remote. Communication becomes so much more important because you don't have some of the elements. So maybe you're not face to face, maybe you don't have body language as a cue, and these kind of things, right? But also I think there's other skills there that we should be talking about, like, is this person a self-starter, or do they need a lot of hand holding? Can you guys build a little bit of that? Like, what kind of initiatives that engineers should have to make sure that they land that job?
Is speaking from a perspective of talking to a few candidates now, and then also hearing about what the companies that we're working with are looking for. Like you said, Sheila, just to reinforce, communication is really key and it's really important. We had, I think we had a Ubitalk recently about what the companies are looking for, right? And like Mike well said, a lot of times it's very focused on the soft skills, and the technical skills can be taught. So say that they're doing a pair programming during the interview, they don't want to see only if you can code, but they want to see if you have a blocker, if you don't know about something, you ask the other members of the team. If you're going to ask them, hey, does this make sense? So this is kind of like doing a pair programming in your day-to-day. So you're just doing that with the team. So demonstrating that communication. And nowadays, the developers are not just, the old throw over the wall, that they're just finishing their code and just passing it on. They're talking with product to understand the value for the end user. They're talking with quality to make sure that their code is testable. They're talking with other stakeholders. So it's really important to show that communication during your interview. So it goes back to, talking about that and
negotiating trade-offs and this stuff, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that for sure is some very important things.
Yeah, and just to sort of kind of elaborate on that too, we want to know that an employee can sort of deal with the hurdles that come in every problem you're trying to solve. So we want some grit, somebody that's going to push ahead, a self-starter, that somebody is going to find the solution on their own when presented with a problem. We want somebody that's going to make an impact in the company, not someone just to write code or work on a particular feature, but somebody that is going to make meaningful impact on the company and on the product, whatever that is. Somebody who is mentally curious, so they don't stop at the first easy answer. They try to pursue kind of an understanding of the whole problem, and they think sort of systemically. Somebody who takes personal ownership of a task or a project, because you think, most of these are distributed situations. So we need to make sure that you can take something and run with it, and then also know when you need to communicate back with the team. And then, the communication, there needs to be a little bit of polish. And when I say polish, we're not looking for accents are beautiful, right? That adds to the team. That's not a drawback, but somebody who can listen to what other people are saying, interpret it accurately, and then respond in a manner that sort of the other person can hear what they're saying. And that's just very basic. So I probably got into a little bit more detail than what you were looking for, but generally speaking, that's the profile of a perfect candidate that I see across the work that I do.
What I hear from what you guys are saying is like a lot about we talked about empathy before, but also about humility, right? To know that you need to improve, know that you will learn from absolutely everyone you're gonna interact with. And in that sense, like when you're saying polish, like, okay, be a nice person. It should be basic, but please be a nice person, even when it's like stressful mode or something like that.
Yeah. I was just thinking about that. And I mean, how can you do that when you go to an interview and they're going to ask you, hey, do you have a self-starter mentality? Are you a self-starter? You're not going to say, yes, I am, because then you're just, you're conceited, but you will say, well, I believe that I am because X, Y, and Z, and this is an example. So I think this is another really important point. And it goes back to studying the job description. You're knowing those soft skills that they're looking for. You do some research on the company and you find some cultural aspects. Be ready to share examples of that. So, it's more about you telling them how you've done that in the past, giving them, tangible examples of how you go about showing those attributes, rather than saying, yes, sure, I do have that quality. I do have that mentality. So I think that's really important as well, to think of examples, to know things that they're looking for, to really, like Mike said, know yourself, know your strengths, the things that you've done in the past, so you can show that to an interviewer too.
Yeah, and Dani, you mentioned a great sort of point. This is really all about telling your personal story. When I was listing off those attributes, of rigor and polish and strong communication, you want to highlight examples where you demonstrated that. As you think of these examples, think about all the small projects that you worked on or feature launches as individual sort of projects, and tell the story. What was the problem? This is what I did, and look at this great result that I helped contribute to. And that's really what we're looking for. So we say kind of practice your stories and make sure the stories demonstrate the hard work, the ability to go above and beyond, the personal ownership, that autonomy, but collaboration when possible. That's where you demonstrate those in the stories that you tell to them.
That is awesome. And then here, just me featuring again and talking. We actually had last Tuesday a special webinar on how to do storytelling specifically for engineers, during hiring processes, how you set up those things. So again, check our YouTube channel. We have tips from Pilachi, right, Dani? You know him even better than I. He's an expert and he helps people convince other people that they're good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. If anybody here that's watching, if you guys want to use the chat and forward your questions, please go ahead. We're opening a Q&A session soon. Other than that, I just have like some very basic tips of like some things, right? So sometimes we have these really good candidates. They have been extremely qualified because of their experience and so on. They have done their due diligence, and then they mess up with very little things. So let's say they got an interview and they're late, for example, and they missed that, and that's already shows that they're not responsible or that they're not engaged. What kind of things either interviewers complain about, or what things should candidates be aware of so they're not discarded before even showing what they're good at?
Yeah, I'd say just a very few things. Like we're working remotely now, so it's very rare that you have to go into the company and do an interview. So if you're gonna log in and join a Zoom or join a Google Meets, make sure you're prepping and you're there. You're testing things, a few minutes before. You have your mic set, you have your camera set. Everything is working. If there is any problem, you can notify somebody beforehand rather than just joining on the minute and then you have a lot of problems. So I would say just start that process a few minutes before, so when they show up, you're there, you're ready. Internet connectivity is really important. I mean, it sucks that you're talking to someone and it's breaking up or there's a hard time hearing, and this only because it compromises with the ability of your conversation, right? If you're constantly having to repeat yourself, you're going to lose your train of thought. So make sure that you have a good connectivity, that you're paying attention to your infrastructure. Go on a quiet place, and even study a little bit about the culture so that you can better know how to pose and behave yourself.
Sure.
Those first impressions as well.
Yeah. So some companies might be more laid back, and then that might choose, your outfit or your background accordingly, and that already shows that you have be mindful and that you might be a good match, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think this goes back into studying the company and knowing a little bit about the culture, so we can better prepare for that. You don't need suit and tie, but just so that you can get a better sense of their attitude as well.
That is great. Mike, do you have anything to add as well, like small details that people should be mindful of?
I think you probably get a sense I'm a big picture kind of guy. So I would just, obviously all of those things that Dani mentioned are sort of really key elements. It's easy to screw up with one faux pas, and that be sort of the bad first impression. So obviously those are important to pay attention to. But I'm looking for, as an interviewer, I'm looking for kind of a balanced candidate. I want someone that has technical skills and some soft skills. I want someone who can collaborate and be independent and autonomous. I want someone who is assertive but not aggressive. And someone that is transparent but respectful of professional boundaries. I don't need to hear about your family problems on your first interview. I care about you as an individual, but we wait to talk about those things as you get to know each other, right? So we're looking for someone to not put up any red flags in the interview. And red flags for a prospective employer is anything in extremes, right? So we're really looking for that balanced candidates. I don't have any additional tips to add, but I went big picture on you again, so I apologize for that.
No, but I think that's valid as well for people to, again, when you're prepping, this helps also for you to kind of like, let's say before you get on the call, save some prep time for you to just like wind down and like, okay, let me just relax a little bit about the call. Let me go and watch something and not interrupt another job I'm working on, like take half an hour for yourself to meditate or do whatever you need, because you will do better in the interview, right?
Yeah.
If your emotions are okay and so on. Other than that, does anybody want to add any questions before we wrap up? Everybody's kind of fired or comments or complain that things are not. We're here for it.
And while people might send some questions, one last thing, and I wanted to go back into the questions, right? So I'd say that's really important too. The interview, like Mike said, it's like a first date. So it's a give and take. It's very important for the company to know if you're a good match for their opportunity, but it's also very good for you to understand if the company makes sense for you, if that opportunity makes sense for you. So you can ask questions, get your questions ready, be that about the team, be that about the challenge, the tools, whatever details is important for you to know. Get your questions ready so that you can bring them up in the end. And this also shows interest, shows engagement in the opportunity. Hey, this person is really curious. I think they did their due diligence. they studied, they brought all their relevant experience, and they also asked really thoughtful questions. So I think they're really engaged. I think they might be a good match for me. So it's two things in one.
And it's always better, right? If you find out that that you're not a good match, it's always better to find that out in the interview than you actually landing the job. And then, 3 months down the line, being really frustrated, because that's how we burn bridges, right? Either the company is going to think that you're not a good person, or you're going to think that the company isn't good, and it's not. It's just a matter of a bad match. Maybe it's not exactly what you need in this specific time, right? So it's always better to save everybody time and energy and just make sure that that everybody is happy and where they should be.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that adds the real value to being yourself, right? Because if you try to put on sort of an act or present in a certain way that you think the company wants, then you have to sustain that ongoing to meet their expectations, and you end up having challenges down the road. So really look at it as the employer knows what kind of person they're looking for, and they're seeing if you match. And that's simply it. So present the best version of yourself, practice, rehearse, and each time gets easier.
Absolutely. Okay, then let me just recap what we've been speaking over. So basically what we understand is, soft skills really do matter, right? The hard skills are mandatory. It's just like a qualification part of them checking your resume and making sure that you're able to fulfill the expectations and the responsibilities, but it is the soft skill that's going to differentiate between you and another candidate. So that's a big thing, like work on yourself, know yourself, and be very, very much aware. So like Dani and Mike have been saying, practice a lot, communication, self-awareness, discipline and time management, be able to show examples of trade-offs that you've made, how you've made decisions, how open-minded you are towards collaboration, right? About even saying no is important in collaboration. It's better to align expectations of, like, how do you negotiate a deadline, for instance. Do you guys have anything to add? A couple of last words?
Well said. Well done with the recap, Shayla. I think that's it.
Okay. Well, for folks that are watching us now or the recording later, if you do want to know how to continue to develop your soft skills and so on, we're always providing content, but we're also going to be launching through Ubiminds Academy a soft skill program, like a 3-month program, focused specifically in product engineering and data roles, right? So if you already have the hard skills, and you probably already do, and you have the English skills and so on, we will help you develop this storytelling from your resume all the way down to, on the job stand-up during a morning daily or something like that, right? So if you want to know a little bit more, you can check our website. You can write us at ubiminds@ubiminds.com and be curious. We're going to have lots of fun stuff coming up soon. Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.
All
Thank you,
right.
everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you, everyone.